So we're talking here today about impact, and I'm going to talk to you about there's a worldwide revolution going on out there today. And you know, we hear a lot about revolution, and we hear, it's an overused phrase. We're always hearing about there's either going to be a revolution or there's one right on right now. But you know, sometimes people are right when they say there's a worldwide revolution. Here's Malcolm X, 1965. He was right. There was a worldwide revolution, human rights, that changed fundamentally the way we think about human rights and the way we organize our political lives. Well, I'm telling you that there's a worldwide revolution going on now in our universities, and that's an unlikely place, let's be honest. I mean, we know we have students who demonstrate, a lot of talk about revolution on campuses, but actually campuses are a very conservative place. Things don't change much. Here's the University of Bologna, one of the oldest colleges at the University of Bologna. The University of Bologna in Italy, thought to be the first Western university, founded in the year 1088. Well, this is University of Bologna today, not that much different from what it would have looked like a long time ago, and the way in which universities were organized was around the lecture. You have the professor stands at the front of the room. Here's a painting from the 14th century. Professor standing at the front of the room lecturing to a bunch of students, right? And the lecture is defined as the action of reading, that which is read. It's from the Latin, lectus, to read. Well, it's not a very effective way, actually, to teach, even though we're talking here in these TED Talks. We're limited to 18 minutes. Here's a lecture. Here's William Hogarth, 1736, a sketch called The Lecture. You look at the lecturer having a great time reading the text, but look at the people listening to the lecturer. They're either asleep or they're doing something else. They didn't have technology in those days. They couldn't look on Facebook or check their emails, but if they would have, if they had the opportunity, they probably would have, right? So we know that the lecture is not a very effective way. Don't start the video yet, just hold on. So for many years, people have tried to improve on the lecture. One of the ways was this so-called Socratic Method. Now, I'm a lawyer. When I went to law school, people had this idea, we'll get these students involved. We'll ask them questions, and we'll expect the student to think about the answer. And so we'll get them involved. Well, one of the most famous portrayals of this in film is a 1973 movie called The Paper Chase, and it featured a professor, fictional professor, Kingsfield, who was a contract law professor. And here's a clip that sees Professor Kingsfield in action, and this is, he's going to talk to the unfortunate Mr. Hart, who has been called on in the class to answer a question about contract law. So let's hear Professor Kingsfield in action.
Mr. Hart, I will myself give you the facts of the case. Hawkins versus McGee is a case in contract law, the subject of our study. The boy burned his hand by touching an electric wire. A doctor who was anxious to experiment in skin grafting asked to operate on the hand, guaranteeing that he would restore it 100%. He took a piece of skin from the boy's chest and grafted it onto the unfortunate boy's hand. The operation failed to produce a healthy hand. Instead, it produced a hairy hand, a hand not only burned, but covered with dense, matted hair. Mr. Hart?
All right, now Mr. Hart is now going to be asked, what are the damages that this unfortunate victim is entitled to? He had a burned hand. And he was promised a healed hand, but instead he got a burned and hairy hand. So now we're going to see what's the experience like for Mr. Hart, and also watch the other students in the class. Let's play the second part of the clip.
What damages do you think the doctor should pay? What did the doctor promise?
There was a promise to fix the hand back to the way it was before it was burned.
And the result of the operation?
The hand was much worse than before he went to the doctor.
How should the court measure the damages? What should the doctor pay the boy?
The doctor should the doctor should pay for what he did, and he should pay for the difference between what the boy had, a burned hand, and what the doctor gave him, a burned and hairy hand?
Okay. Well, for those of you who know contract law, you'll know Mr. Hart actually got the wrong answer. But he was entitled, in fact, to what he was promised, not what he was given, which was a healthy hand, the difference between what he was promised and what he was given. But the point is this. Did Mr. Hart have a good learning experience? Not likely. And what about the other students in the class? What are they doing? The theory is the other students are supposed to be thinking. What is the correct answer? What are they actually thinking? They're sinking down in their seats. They don't want to be called on by Professor Kingsfield, right? So, well, when I was a young law professor, I tried the Socratic Method. I've tried it from time to time, and it doesn't seem to go over well with the students. So about 5 or 6 years ago, one of our technology people said, here's a way to get around the difficulties of the Socratic Method. We'll each give each student a clicker. And so you're the professor, you ask them a question, and they click the answer, and it comes up on a screen. And here's a picture that was taken from one of my classes. And at least that avoids this embarrassment. It gets all the students involved. The problem is it's very cumbersome. You can only, I found, use a clicker question once or twice in an hour. So it doesn't actually transform the learning experience. The rest of the time, you're still standing there lecturing, like I'm doing to you here this morning. So, well, with technology, some of the ideas people have had is, all right, let's tape our lectures and put them on the internet. And people can watch the lectures on the internet. So here's a famous Harvard, again, a law professor, sorry to use all these examples, Michael Sandel, who does, in fact, an entire course. And you see, you can watch the entire course on Academic Earth. I particularly like the Spider-Man impersonator, or perhaps the real Spider-Man, we don't know. But this doesn't actually change the learning experience, right? Now you're at home watching TV with a lecturer, so you can't even pose a question. So that's not a very effective way to go about. Well, in fact, the true revolutionaries have started this who haven't even been in university classrooms. Here's a fellow named Sal Khan. Many of you will have seen him. He, in fact, spoke at a TED Talk about a year ago in California. He was a hedge fund analyst. He wasn't a university professor. And he had a cousin who said, you know, Cousin Sal, I'm having real trouble with mathematics. He was a grade school mathematics student. He said, you know, he can help me. Well, his cousin wasn't living in the same city, so he thought, what I'll do is I'll put some videos up on YouTube, and maybe I'll help you. Well, the cousin liked the videos, but not only that, other people started to like the videos. And it turned out thousands and thousands of people started watching these videos. Here's an example of him putting videos, and the thing about the videos was this. Sal was never on the screen. Sal was drawing, and the videos were very short. They were only 2 or 3 minutes long. And it turned out that after they became so popular that Sal decided to quit his job as a hedge fund analyst and found this Khan Academy, which is now known as the Khan Academy. And in fact, it's very successful. There's over 3,000 videos now on the Khan Academy website, and there's over millions of students, 4 million students a month watch Khan Academy videos. Now you might say, all right, well that's fine. That's for high school. That may be for grade school. What about the university? It's more sophisticated. Surely this wouldn't work at the university. Well, turns out it does. Here's a fellow, professor at Stanford, computer science, named Sebastian Thrun. So Sebastian Thrun teaches a course called Artificial Intelligence, and he has maybe 160, 170 students in his class. In the fall of 2011, he decided, you know what, I'll put this on the internet. I'll put my course on the internet. I'll start putting videos up on the internet, and I'll let any student take the videos or watch the videos for free. And it turned out he thought, well, maybe I'll get a few hundred, maybe 1,000 students. It turned out he got 160,000 students watching these videos. And this was an overwhelming phenomenon. Here we can see in this short video, he explains the theory of his educational approach. Let's watch this video.
So the online medium is quite amazing. We decided to flip the entire way we teach. Rather than lecturing students, we decided to quiz students. We would ask them a question, and then our website would play that question. I would narrate it, as you can see here. And then the question would turn into a quiz. And the student could venture their guesses. Our automated grading software would tell which one's right, which one's wrong. And then after I let the student think about things, we would tell them what the right answer is. So the principal way of engaging is that the student has to think. And by doing this, we empower the student to learn new skills, which is fundamentally different from the way lectures take place at universities today.
So you see that what the experience here, Professor Thrun, is reversing the experience. He's putting the student at the center of the experience. So what do students think about this? Well, first of all, he had 160,000 students. They weren't university students. Here's a letter, an email, that was sent to Professor Thrun from a student in a remote area of Afghanistan. And she writes, "I spent the last few days under incoming mortar and rocket attacks. I had about an hour of internet connectivity to get the assignments done and still managed a respectable score." So imagine this. Here's somebody who's running from mortar attacks, but they're so interested in this course that they stop and go on the internet and start doing math problems in the middle of a war zone. Here's another letter. Here's another student. "It feels more intimate than most of the lectures I have attended in the past. I felt that you were personally tutoring me." Well, this is an incredible thing, isn't it? There's something real about this that is not captured simply in the act of lecturing. So Professor Thrun, in January of this year, 2 months ago, said, "I am going to quit Stanford and start doing this full-time. And I am going to put these videos and I'm going to put courses on the internet for free to allow anybody to take these courses, and they're going to get grades and they're going to get some kind of recognition." And so he founded something called Udacity with another one of his colleagues there, and the first course that they're teaching is building a search engine. It started in the month of February, just last month. Now you might say, well, that's all very well and good, but how do they have interaction? How do the students interact with each other? Isn't it very sterile? You're having all these thousands of students. It actually is not. Here is a discussion board. So he creates a discussion board, and you'll see that there are 1,500 questions have been posted and 7,100 answers. And look at this, 1 minute ago, 3 minutes ago, 4 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago, 7 minutes ago. Constantly, you go on this website, constantly people posting questions and answers. And then he creates a series of badges, gold, silver, bronze. How many times was an answer that you've given viewed by others? And based on the number of page views, you get more bronze medals, gold medals, and so on. And people are very interested all of a sudden in these medals, and they're doing this all for free. So what this demonstrates is that this, in fact, can be translated to the university situation. And here is a post on the internet from last week from a professor at another university who's a professor at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He decided, I think I'll just start enrolling in the course. He actually signed up in the course just to see what it's like. It's probably not very good. And then he writes this, "I'm finding the course so compelling that I want to work on it all the time. I had a hard time this week stopping once I'd started. I even found myself wanting to work on the course during the day while I was at work. And the one time I actually succumbed to that temptation, it took a student wandering into my office to make me veer off." You talk about engagement. Here's a professor. What professor do you know who's attended another professor's lecture and been interested in it? I can probably count them on one hand. It's like a punishment, right? In fact, we force professors to go to other professors' classes. Here's a professor who says, not only do I want this course, I can't stop working on it. What does it mean for universities? Well, first thing you can say is, 10 years ago, the Borders bookstores or a massive chain of bookstores, over 1,200 bookstores in North America. How many bookstores, Borders bookstores, do you see today? The answer is none. The last store closed in September 2011. Went bankrupt. You would never have known it 10 years ago. There was a revolution going on in the book-selling business, and Borders got caught with it. If once you see that you can have a lecturer deliver a course, a professor deliver a course to 160,000 students, or 1 million students, that fundamentally changes the nature of university education. And it will happen, whether universities do it or not, because others, whether it's Sal Khan or it is Professor Thrun, or now MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which on Monday of this week started its new online courses, offered for free to anyone who wants to sign up. So what does it mean for universities? Well, before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about York University, because at York, in fact, we're trying to stay ahead of this wave. Here's a website developed by Professor Jean Adams, a faculty member at York, and you can see that what she's developed here, that she developed this about 5 years ago, called New Mindsets. And it contains a whole series of resources for students, tutorial resources, learning journals, lecture resources, and you see here a class. Professor Adams no longer lectures behind a lectern. She has an iPad tablet. She stands at the front of the room with her iPad tablet. The students have computers, and Professor Adams, who's sitting right here, will push material to her students' laptops or draw the material from the laptops onto her own tablet. So she's trying to interact there with those students. Here's another course by Professor Kelly Parks, who has created a learning environment for students talking about climate change. So students post on this website and engage in discussions with each other. Here's a course that's just been started by my colleague, Professor Robin Roth, who is a professor in the Department of Geography. And what Professor Roth does is teaches a course on climate change, and she has students here at York, but she also has students in a refugee camp in Thailand who take time to interact with Professor Roth via Skype. And here she is, here's Professor Roth and a TA, talking to a series of these students, and there's a whole series of slides. In fact, we're very proud of this because it's enabled our students, it's been able to reach now to reach globally. We've talked today about Twitter, and you know lawyers often talk too much. There's in fact now a moot conducted entirely by Twitter, the first moot ever in the world conducted by Twitter. It forces lawyers to talk in characters of no more than 140 characters. It was very difficult, but in fact, we had a bunch of Osgood students from York University who captured the first ever Twitter moot, made it in the American Bar Association Journal, by the way. So, what does it mean for universities? Well, what it means, I think, first of all, is this is a lecture hall, traditional lecture hall from 2005. 10 years from now, this will not exist. The lecture hall will exist. You might use it for studying, but there will be no economic reason to have 300 or 400 students sitting in a room listening to a lecture. It simply will not make sense, because there will be too many alternatives to deliver that information. What we will have to do is do what Sal Khan did, do what Sebastian Thrun did. We will have to flip the classroom. The classroom has to become a place where the students work through problems and work through and discuss and are challenged to work through problems by the professor and by the teaching assistants. Because otherwise, if universities don't adapt to that, they will not survive, right? That's the message that we're seeing here. And the point is that this will be better for students. This will be better because it will place the students at the center of the learning experience, and it will also lower costs. We will have to lower costs, because if people are offering this for free, that is zero cost. Well, we can't offer it for free, but we will have to offer it at a lower cost if we are going to deliver real value to our students. Now, change is difficult in universities, but I think this is a welcome change, because I think ultimately it will be a better place for our students, for our universities, and for our faculty members, and ultimately for society. Thank you very much.